Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. We're joined by a special guest. His name is Andy Jack. He's from Candle Digital and Training Spark. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and e-learning. Candle Digital is an agency, but they also have some WordPress tools over at Training Spark. And one of the ones that really caught my eye was the AI e-learning Powerpack. We'll get into all that, but first, welcome to the show, Andy.
Thanks, Chris. Really excited to talk through the conversation, see what we've got to talk about. I think there's some really good topics to dig into today.
Yeah, it's a deep one. Tell us about the opportunity with artificial intelligence with e-learning at a high level. Like, what's going on? What's the state of play? And where are we going with all this?
Yeah, well, I think back to when I started in all things web. So this was the late 90s, and I don't know if it was the same in the States as it was in the UK, but you used to get these magazines, and they used to have the CDs, the CD-ROMs on the front with like CompuServe or AOL. And I remember that first time when we got I think it was a 14.4K modem, and plugged it into my 486 PC, and I got this CD-ROM. I installed, I think it was the CompuServe browser system. And I remember logging on for the first time, heard the modem whirring away, that sound that, younger generations might not have a clue what it is. And I just remember being presented with the World Wide Web for the first time, and it felt messy, but it felt new, and it felt full of potential. And I think of where we are now in terms of the internet and AI and Gen AI specifically, and I feel like it's a very similar vibe to me. It feels like there is a huge amount of opportunity to, in e-learning terms, to craft some of the opportunities that we've always wanted to, but never really had the chance to, or never had the tools to. So I'm really excited around things like personalization and for scaffolded conversations and virtual tutors. I just think we've finally been presented with a tool now which we can do some really exciting stuff and actually create very high impactful, experience-led masterclasses and courses and educational experiences. So I'm really excited by it. I think, I don't know if sometimes I'm in a bit of a bubble. So I'm a bit of a LinkedIn fiend. And if you look at my feed these days, it's nothing but AI. So I wonder if I'm in a little bit of a bubble. The way I'm getting it at the moment is, if you think about the Gartner hype cycle, I think over the last 6 months we've had this, wow, this excitement. This is a really exciting place. I'm starting to feel that we're starting to hit that, what was it called? The trough of disillusionment, I think it's called. We're starting to hit that as some of the novelty's worn off, some of the excitement's worn off. It's actually, hey, what are the actual use cases we need to derive out of this now to actually make this thing useful and work for us rather than it work for AI itself. So yeah, I think really exciting times, but I think now it's starting to really tease out where it actually adds value in educational experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it does feel like we're kind of exiting the toddler years and we're starting to
Yeah.
grow up a little bit. Well, which use case are you most excited about when it comes to e-learning and AI?
Yeah, there's some really practical ones now that I say in production and we can use straight away. So I really like what we call scaffolded reflections. So some of the things that we believe are really important to an educational experience are practice, feedback, and reflection. Those are really important. And we try and get away from knowledge acquisition. It's all about transformation. And practice, feedback, and reflections are really important at that. I think the challenge with reflections is, if you're not particularly academic, or maybe education wasn't your thing, or maybe it's just a new skill you're trying to learn, to reflect on something can actually be quite hard. So if I know one of our clients is a personal brand expert, and she really wants her customers to really dig into their value set, because that underpins what the personal brand that they're going to display. And if you ask people what their values are, and you present them with a blank script, it's really hard to dig into that. So I really like the way that AI can prompt and cajole and provide a draft that can then be shaped. So it's almost like at the potter at his wheel, it's throwing the clay on the table. So AI can throw that clay on the table, and you can shape and mold it. So, for example, with the personal brand expert that we work with, Deborah Ogden, she asks several questions, and the way we've worked with her masterclass is it gets to understand that person and their background, what their story is, and it starts to squeeze out. Well, given what you've already told us, here's what we think your values may be, and then what they do is they take that and say, well, I don't agree with this one, I don't agree with that one, but actually this one's really on point, and they can start to refine it. So that's a very immediate practical use of AI that we're baking in with our client projects straight away, and we're just finding that it's having a great impact. Um, the other one as well for me that works very well is simulations or kind of virtual conversations. So we work with a client who does a lot around career development, and particularly around getting the job that you want. And a scary part of getting a job is the interview process. So we've created a tool that sits within her course that allows someone to knock the edges off that interview experience. So, for example, we're using ChatGPT and well, OpenAI specifically, as a way of creating personas. So the personas are almost sitting in, and it's just a chat interface at this stage. It's nothing. It's not using voice or anything like that. But each persona plays a different role in that interview context. So one might be the interviewer, one might be the head of HR, one of them might be the MD or the FD, something like that. And what it starts to do is it starts to pose questions and starts to react based on what the user fires back. Now it's not perfect; it's a little clunky, but it gets them to the goal a little bit. It gets them a little bit closer. It knocks off some of those edges. So I already think we're starting to see some practical use cases that we can bake into our programs.
I think that's wonderful. Like the AI space, I feel like the course creator space is also growing up a little bit because you have these subject matter experts who have a lot of knowledge, but they're not trained as teachers or instructional designers. So like even something like the Socratic method in asking questions and not just delivering videos or PDFs or slideshows, but
Mm.
getting people thinking and taking action is just as much a part of learning as the content, right?
Absolutely, it's something to be fair, we rail against quite a bit. I think, unfortunately, I'm a huge fan. Given what we do about online courses, but I think a lot of people and course creators fall into the trap of thinking an online course is just gated content. And actually, it's not really. A person wants to take that online course because they're looking for a shortcut to an outcome. They're in place A, they want to be in place B, and there's something stopping them getting to place B. And your online course should help them with that. And that's often not just a case of firing content at people, it's about taking them on the journey, giving them opportunities to practice, reflect, and get feedback. And I think those are almost that's the essence, that's the experience that creates transformation, not the content. The content is a key part of that, but it's not at the center of it. It's the experience that's at the center of it.
I love that. Yeah, I love explaining to people that, there's that website masterclass
Oh yeah,
and it's like $20 a month or something. And you have the best experts in the world. And if somebody asks, like, well, why is that only $20? It's like, well, if you learn how to become a comedian from Steve Martin, he's not going to help you tell your jokes. It's just
yeah,
content.
absolutely.
That's not like a $2,000 coaching program or something else, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the online course place is interesting as well because we found that we've moved as a digital studio to developing more cohort based courses, which has been a
Yeah.
really interesting move. And I think it's because it brings certain characteristics to a learning experience that perhaps on demand um, struggles with. But I think on demand still has its place. I think for those that want to get somewhere fast and perhaps don't need a community experience, it's great. But we're finding that cohort-based courses bring aspects such as accountability. Particularly where you're part of a group, or perhaps you have live workshops as well. It brings that community aspect as well. So it's I think the online world, or the online course world, or online education world is ever changing. It's a really kind of fluid dynamic, and AI is can I say, a new grenade that's been thrown into the mix, and it's
Yeah.
it's, it's shaking things up, and I love that because I think there's so much potential in online learning to transform people's lives and to transform communities in the world. But it's not about gated content. It's about transformative experiences, and those need designing well and delivering well.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the benefits of AI or the opportunity with a course creator that wants to design a more robust learning experience in addition to content? Obviously, we have scale, like it's going to
Mm.
automate and scale, but what else? What's the other benefits of using AI for reflections and tutoring and things like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of experts get into the online course game because they want to scale themselves up, and that's so a lot of our clients are typically delivering their experiences, their training in person or on virtual, and they hit a ceiling. There's only so much of them they can give, and I think what online learning allows them to, what AI allows them to do is there's new opportunities now to scale that up and bring the essence of them into it. So um, we love the idea of. I don't know if you've read Tiago Forte's Second Brain. It's a wonderful concept. It's about taking everything that's in the brain and basically put it into Notion. But I like the idea of that from an online learning perspective. And the challenge I always think about: can we do that from an online learning perspective? Can we take this expert? Can we take their insights, their knowledge, their stories, their scars, and their spiky points of view, and try and capture this into one brain, a virtual brain that perhaps AI could power. And this is something we're trying to play around with and tease out with the work that we do at Candle Digital. And I don't think we're there yet with it, but I love that as a concept of almost turn that and bring that into different forms. So it could be a virtual tutor, so someone that accompanies or um, guides a person through the course without actually having to be there. Now, I think there's always an importance of having some kind of human connection, whether with that be peers or with the tutor or the course leader themselves. But I love the idea of being able to use AI to distill the essence of that person and all their insights and use that in an online learning environment to scale it up. So I don't think we're there yet. We're playing with a lot of tools. I don't know if you've come across the model context protocol. It's a really interesting concept around. I think someone said it was the USB-C of AI. So it sits in the middle. It allows it to interface with different things, and I can just see that being part of this amazing second brain that allows it to scale someone up. So yeah, I think that's the opportunity we're looking at. Again, I don't think we're there yet, but it's exciting times for that.
Well, help us understand just like sort of technically. I think some people have this idea that maybe you're going to use ChatGPT, but you can put your own source material into that second brain. Tell us
Yeah.
about that. Like, because maybe the branding expert might want both some general branding help from the large language model of ChatGPT or OpenAI, but they also want to load in like their unique secret sauce and take.
Mm.
So should we do both? Should we really just focus on our unique second brain? Or like, how do we think about that?
Yeah, I think what I would say at the moment is there isn't really a playbook for AI for course creators yet.
Yeah.
I think we're still writing it as we go. It's almost like the train is on the tracks and we're putting the tracks on actually as the train is speeding ahead. So we're still trying to figure it out. So I don't think there's any kind of preset path yet for this. But yeah, I've heard it called a RAG corpus. So is it retrieval augmented generation? So it's not just where it's pulling from the LLM itself. It's actually using source material to pull that in. And we use that a lot within our own internal workflow at Candle Digital. So we have a custom GPT, and that's always something I would recommend any course creator to create. In ChatGPT as an example, as a way of. Well, we've got one at Candle Digital called the Strategic Brand Partner, and in
Okay.
that we've got it's pulling from the large corpus of ChatGPT, but in there it's got our mission and purpose and values. It's got our tone of voice. It's got our branding documents, and I live in this custom GPT. So I'm using it every day to test new business ideas, to help me write blog posts, all this kind of stuff. And I think once we have this model context protocol in place, which can be done through NA10, and there are a few other things. I think make.com as well has a model context protocol tool in it. you can start to pull in all these resources, whether that be sat within the tool itself or whether it's pulling from Google, and start to use this to overlay it. But I don't think yet, I could be wrong, that there's actually a way to use that and present that back to an audience just yet. But I don't think we're far off at all.
Yeah. And I think subject matter experts, I mean, a lot of them have like books, slide presentations, maybe a history of podcasting, a YouTube
Yeah.
channel, a blog. Like creators are being set up to win super big here, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, if you take yourself as an example, Chris, and your plethora of videos on Lifter LMS, I'm sure if I could, use a transcription tool and take all of those, I could probably create, quite a good version of Chris. And I'm sure it wouldn't, it might be 90% there. It might not have some of your quirks and some of your spiky points of view, but I'm sure it'd be a pretty good representation of what you're all about. And I think that's, we talk about our subject experts are often sat on a mountain of value that they're not making the most out of. So there'll be so much of their expertise sat in, as you said, PowerPoints, workbooks, toolkits, books they've written, slides they've designed, all this kind of stuff. And they've got all this, and actually they're not making the most out of it. And those are often the clients that come to us. They say, I want to have more impact. I want to leave a legacy. I want to reach more people. I know there's a huge amount of potential in what I have. How do I scale this up? And I think online learning so far has helped us do that, but I think AI is, fuel on the fire to make that go even further.
Yeah. And I just want to throw out another tool recommendation. You mentioned building a custom GPT. Everybody should try that. But what's also cool is Google's Notebook LM,
Oh yeah,
which allows you to add like multiple sources, videos, documents, all kinds of stuff. So if you're working on the problem with ChatGPT in my experience is like if you're working on a big project, you kind of
yeah,
get lost in the threads and, it just gets a little crazy, but you can also like create that corpus inside of a Google LM and stuff, which is or
yeah.
Notebook LM, which is super cool.
And absolutely, and you get the novelty of the podcast feature as well. Which when everyone talks about Notebook LLM, it's always the podcast feature where you can. And I've used that quite a lot. I remember taking. I think you can come across Mr. Beast's
Oh
guide
yeah.
of how he does production. I just looked at it and thought that's quite a lot to consume. So what I'll do is I'll stick it through, Notebook. I'll take that podcast and when I'm out for a walk in the park, I'll digest it that way. So I love that it gives us lots of tools like that to see things in different ways.
Let's talk about course creation, like maybe more on the content side. Like
Okay.
I see some people trying to take a shortcut and have like, ask ChatGPT to make me an outline and then make me the content for this. And they're not really adding any of their own stuff to it. And you can create some good stuff that way, but um, there's also, I find it much easier. I just did a course on it, how to use ChatGPT to create an online course. And I know that I have a section in there where you have to dump in your own human knowledge dump, I call it, to
Yeah.
add your unique take, sources, ideas. Um, but what's your advice to creators like when they're trying to flesh out a like sort of an outline and an approach on a topic and how to leverage AI without just being like, here, ChatGPT, do it all for me.
Yeah, I think that's coming at it from the wrong angle, isn't it? It's about what could you teach rather than who is your audience and what is the transformation they're looking to achieve. So yeah, lots to unpick there. So we use a technique called action mapping quite heavily by Kathy Moore. It's a brilliant book, and but the key part of it is it focuses on the audience. It's all about who are you trying to serve, what's their desired outcome, what are their challenges that get in the way from achieving it themselves. So always starting with that point, because I think that's the key. And it's all about having a real understanding of your audience, but not only from a content or from a course creation perspective, but also from a marketing perspective. You need to create experiences that resonate, that connect, but that only not only needs to be reflected in the actual products, but in your positioning and in your marketing as well. And I think that's so. I'd always start with that. So the way I would be using AI in that perspective is actually helping me to, before I even think about course structures and course overviews and course format, it's helped me get under the skin of my audience. So I'd actually be using it to scaffold that. So, you know, use it as your sparring partner to help you suss out the best approach to tackle that problem of understanding your users. So, which I do all the time. So, you know, ask it, what's the best way to do this if you're unsure, and it'll come back with, the perfect places with interviews. So get hold of interview, like we're having a chat now, transcribe it, get AI to distill it. What are the key themes through all of that? And get ChatGPT to provide a series of questions to scaffold those conversations as well. It can be your partner throughout this whole piece, but only when you've got a strong understanding of the audience. That's when you use it to dig into structures and overviews and outcomes. Because ultimately, otherwise, it's just going to be based on what the rest of the world already has, vanilla content, which isn't going to land from a product perspective. It isn't going to have the transformative aspects or the transformative outcome you're looking for, and it's not going to have any kind of marketing nuance or resonance that's going to capture anyone to actually purchase or enroll in it. So I think that's the key of it. I always think about um, it's I think subject experts are really in a really interesting place at the moment. And depending on what day you wake up, it's either AI is the greatest opportunity we've ever had, or it's the dystopian. It's gonna, wipe my business out overnight. And it's sometimes for me when I wake up in the morning, it depends how I've got out of bed on which side I sit. But I think there's a real opportunity for subject experts to stand out from that. And that comes down to making sure that whatever you produce has the essence of you in it. It has your spiky points of view. It has your context, so you know how to marry the theory with the context of the audience. It has all sorts of different aspects around tone of voice, how you deliver something. It has all those kind of personality traits that AI, being the vanilla homogenous blob of content, it just can't provide. So I think that's the place. I think that's a way to go. The only thing I would also add, just to add to this, and what you've been a prime example of, Chris, is you've been prolific in your asset creation over the last, 5 to 10 years, and you can tell by the YouTube and all the blogs and all the interviews that you have. That corpus of material as a subject expert is absolutely invaluable because it takes forever to create. So if you're not already doing that, start it today, because that's going to form the foundation of whatever you want to create in 3, 6, 12 months time. And just make that sure that stuff as much as possible captures the essence of you, because that's going to be invaluable to that content creation process when you're feeding it through AI.
That's awesome. I'm working on a framework right now. I call it well, the Venn diagram is who, you, and then how.
Okay.
So like how is like, the content and the whatever the content of the course is, but the you is like who is this, or sorry, the who is this for? And I think this
Yeah.
question gets skipped all of the time by subject
Yeah.
matter experts. And then, like you said, what are your values? Like, why are you doing this? What's your unique point of views and stuff? Like, that's where great courses come from. And if you make yourself available, I call it a support mechanism. So, like group coaching calls, email support, one-on-one coaching, online community that you participate in. That's where the value comes from and the conversations. Um,
Absolutely. I think, and there's a couple of things there. I think subject experts fall into the trap of they want to almost download their brain and
yeah,
feed it to their eyes. It's actually, well, they only need a fifth of that, and they only need it in a certain context. And so that's often that's the education trap. But I think there's something around what you said around designing that in a certain way and delivering it so it makes sure it has the essence of you throughout it as well. And again, I think only AI can only support that process.
yeah. And like you, you said, we're not sure where we're at on the timeline, but just start doing it. Like
Mm,
when I created my course on how to create an online course with ChatGPT, I just went full in, used the tools as best I can. It has like tons of prompts, but I also built like a digital version of myself on
okay.
HeyGen, and
Yeah.
I was 90% happy with it. And
Yeah.
so, like in my course, I actually created a real course that we give away for free just to show people what's possible, but it's not perfect. Like AI,
Mm,
just get moving, like don't
yeah.
don't wait, right? Just like you said, don't wait to start creating public free content and sharpen your thoughts and build an audience and SEO and all that stuff, right?
Just create motion. I think just
Yeah.
take one step forward. And I think I don't think anyone has the, as I said, no one has the path yet, but we like to think we're two steps in front. And at the moment, that's okay. As long as we're two steps in front, we can lead people that want to follow us. I think there's an interesting thing about there's a lot of procrastination and perhaps a lot of head in the sand
Yeah.
about I don't really want to get involved with this AI thing. I'm scared of it, or I'm just nervous about it. But I do believe that you're either going to be well. There's a chap in the UK called Daniel Priestley, and he talks about you're either going to be with AI, you're either going to be a super consumer or you're going to be a super creator, and
I like
that's a chasm. That's a chasm. So, and the longer it goes, the wider that chasm is getting. So if you're not, I mean, in terms of our business, when Gen AI came along, it was very much, ooh, where do we fit in with this? This is quite interesting, and in a good way. We're open to the challenge. We're quite excited by that, but we are we like to think about we're surfing in the shallows at the moment. And that's the place to be because we know this big wave is coming. And again, because we're in this bubble, I suspect it might be a bit later than we think. But if we need to make sure that as a business, we're surfing in the shallows and playing with this stuff, because when that wave comes, we need to be able to ride it rather than get drowned by it. So I think making sure that you're committing some time every week to just have a practical use, just have a practical play with this stuff. And I always recommend to the people that aren't really, perhaps just had to play around with ChatGPT, and that's the extent to many people's experiences, or they've created a video avatar or done some stuff in free pick. Create that custom GPT as a starting point. Just because it's that I've just seen so many people do that, and the light bulbs go. You go, oh, okay, this changes things. And I think once you've had that, then it's like you can't help but playing it.
yeah. I think the human brain has a really hard time. Like we know this from like investing as an example of understanding exponential curves because we live in
Yeah,
our brain is kind of linear. But I love that concept you said about the widening gap between the super consumers and super producers. Like,
mm,
our brain can't even comprehend, like, I've done 500 podcast episodes. I've been doing it for over 10 years, and I don't remember every single episode, every word, but ChatGPT can. And
yeah, absolutely.
so you can, like, get somebody's 10 years worth of work and ask it a specific question based on all these experts and everything. And then you can even go exponential off that. You're like, well, I want to ask Chris, GPT, Andy GPT, somebody else, and you can build like a tribe of mentors. I mean, that's just like an exponential thing based on like hundreds of years of content. That's like we
Absolutely.
can't even fathom that.
And I think the key to that is to be prolific in your output. I don't know if it's a Gary Vaynerchuk, but be prolific, not perfect. I think that's what
Like,
he says, and I like that because I think so many people are reluctant to ship, whether it be content or courses or different products. But I think now the half life of content, particularly social content, is so short. You just got to get it out there because the more we're having this conversation now, that can be used and recycled and repurposed and used to form um, these tone and essence of me that I can then use in loads of different products as that process to, you know, almost the world, creating digital products now is becoming almost permissionless. There's very little we can't do, but we need to have that corpus and that understanding of ourselves and to be fair, personal brand as well to be able to build from.
I have a question for you that I see hangs up a lot of course creators, educators, which is sometimes and I would put myself in this category. Like I have some expertise, but have a skill in curating. I'm a voracious lifelong learner, right? And I consume a lot of content. But I see some course creators, perhaps like they're really good at curating, they have a lot of knowledge, but maybe they're newer on their own personal expert journey. And they get into this trap of feeling like, oh, well, it's not my original content. So, like, the problem with AI and all this is like you can source all these awesome material, but then I see people get hung up in thinking about like plagiarism or it's not my original idea. But I mean, if you look at a book, it has an index full of sources, and you can always give credit where credit is due. But any thoughts there, and for as an instructional design perspective on how to get past like the value of being a curator? It's not like you're stealing; you're just good at learning yourself, and you have a lot of sources. So I
Mm.
see that a lot.
Uh, yeah, I mean, there's lots there. I mean, the first one is there is anything original anymore? We might, you know, and the world has. You could almost argue that there's enough content in the world. Do we need any more? Um, but I think it's there's that one. There's also the fact that is that you don't have to be the expert. You just have to be two steps in front because there's
Yeah,
people following in your footsteps that want to be where you are now that are just, two steps, 6 months, 2 years, however you frame it, just behind you. So provide them with the footsteps to get to where you are. And that's not about being the sage or this, the big thinker on this thing. It's actually just being, and actually that can be a benefit. Sometimes if it's really big thoughts, it can feel quite inaccessible. And then remember, it's all about transformation. People are looking for a roadmap to get to somewhere new, whether that be a new career or a change in themselves or and so you can provide those dots. I just think, I don't know, I think, what they say, ideas are worthless, execution is everything. And I think that's so important. Just get on with it and just ship. And I think we we advocate curation, but I think to do curation really well, and it comes back to one of the earliest points is you have to understand the audience. So if you can take all this stuff, this corpus of material, and repurpose it to a niche that is perhaps underserved, isn't having their problem solved, then that's the way to organize it. So I believe with AI coming in and providing so much information and making access to information so democratized, is that I can see course creators going a lot more micro niche, almost drilling down. So I just think it's going to be hard to market yourself as the best in a certain field, but it's a lot easier to market yourself as the only. That's so much. So if you can define yourself as the only person in your go-to field, whatever that might be, and it can be so micro niche, that's the way to start to build it because it's about it's the power law or the exponential. It's all about being number one now, I think, and being the only. So I think it's if you are going down the curation route, again, just lasering on your audience and test it and speak to them and have conversations. It's amazing how much value can just come from conversations with the target audience. And so many people want to skip that because it feels uncomfortable and they might lift the lid on this thing. Oh, that's not what I was expecting. I didn't want to teach that, or I didn't want to provide content on that. So it's having really good, solid conversations that are either going to reaffirm the path you're on, or they're going to change the path that you're on. But the best thing about having conversations with that audience is you're priming an audience to buy your product later
yeah,
on. So it's just a no-brainer. So I always say to our, the people that come into us and say, I've got this idea for X. Well, have you spoken to potential clients about this and what have they said? And you go, oh, I don't want anyone stealing my ideas. It's not about the ideas, it's about execution. And you're in a prime position to deliver on that. So go and speak to your audience and start to build um, demand for what you do and interest in what you're doing and prime it so that when you create the product, you've got an audience there ready and waiting.
yeah. I love that. And also, I just want to add another tip is like, and if you're out there listening or watching, and you're worried about, what makes you unique, draw a Venn diagram, 3 circles, and just combine 3 things.
Yeah,
And so, like, for example, if I was teaching some kind of entrepreneurship, okay, I'm not going to make a general course about entrepreneurship. What if I'm going to also talk about like personal development and how that fits into entrepreneurship? And then what if I'm going to talk about being a one person company? Now
yeah,
that creates a unique kind of thing. And when you do that, you don't necessarily have to be the best at all 3 of those, but you may very well be the best at combining all 3 of those. Um,
absolutely. And
and
that message will land and resonate if you can
yeah,
get that out there. People, we always think with learning experiences, one of our kind of key things that, or one of our metrics, is that someone does it and says, "This feels like it was designed for me." If you can get that at the essence of your course or your masterclass, then that's the gold dust. because then you can market it on that, and you know that the impact it's going to have, it's just going to have such a big ripple effect on them and their audience and their clients, and it's all going to feed upwards if they're in an organization. So that's design it as if it was built, so they feel as if it was built for them.
I've experienced that personally. I was in a software entrepreneur coaching program with Dan Martell, who's kind of famous
Yeah.
on YouTube now. But it was called SaaS Academy, and I got inside there, and there were a bunch of weirdos just like me in this giant community. Actually, it wasn't that giant. I mean, it was big, but it wasn't like tons and tons of people. And it was almost like uh the content and Dan's coaching and everything, it was like psychic, like, oh my God, I didn't even know how to vocalize that problem I had. He just
Mm.
did, and he gave me a solution. And it was like I couldn't get enough of it. It was I was in
Yeah.
there for 2 years just getting into all that, but it was definitely, you know, I know what that feels like on the other side, and that's what you want to
Mm.
create.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and you mentioned I forget what aspect you were talking about, but I like to think of writing as 3 things. It's research, writing, and editing. And we're not even talking about marketing and promotion or course creation or anything, but don't skip the research and then don't
Mm.
skip the editing. So like creating a course isn't just like course creation. I would spend equal time in all of that. Like, let's say I spent 2 months on research, 2 months on building the program, 2 months on editing it, ideally after I've gone through it over it with like a pilot group or something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like people get that wrong in social media too. It's social media. It's not just content, i.e. media. You gotta talk to
Mm.
people, get in the comments, be social.
Yeah, and research out loud. Because if
Yeah,
you're research, there'll be other people that have perhaps researching similar things or are looking for the answers to similar things. And if you can provide them, if you can do your research and create your product, then you served an audience there. I think, yeah, I think social media's become. I mean, LinkedIn has changed quite dramatically for me in the last, well, ever since Twitter became X. There was a big exodus. People moved onto LinkedIn, and it seems much more of a broadcast medium than it ever did, rather than a networking medium. But there's still ripe opportunities there for it. But I think, yeah, to go back to your thing, the one thing that makes me nervous about AI is sometimes it takes out some of the writing process as well. And the
yeah.
writing process is so critical in terms of shaping your ideas and getting things wrong and framing it in different ways. And I guess my advice would be you could use the AI on all three of those: research, writing, and editing, but don't let it do too much of it, because I think it's as much about that critical thinking and honing your craft and shaping it in the right way. And I think that's a key part of it too.
Yeah, I've trained myself. I can feel the pull to just be lazy and just, "Hey, write this thing for me." Like yesterday, I was doing some copywriting in an email. I was
Yeah,
like, "I'm just gonna ask ChatGPT to write this thing," and I'm like, "No, do the first draft and then
yeah,
get it to look at it." So I've trained myself to always, like, input first, like, don't
yeah.
be lazy with a prompt. Um,
But you can see it as well. You can see the output. I mean, I've not really published anything on that front, but when you do create it, you can just tell. You can see below it that it's vanilla homogeneous kind of LLM slop. I think they call it, don't they? Slop. And I think that's something that's really important to push against.
I wanna get your take on another, issue that course creators face, um, which is especially in an AI world where you can kind of create big content. There's sort of two paths that course creators could take, and maybe your branding expert might be a good example. But I could create like a signature course, a big course on like some kind of branding system, or I could create like mini courses and kind of have a membership of like logo design, values definition, color schemes, whatever, and kind of have like these little more bite-sized pieces. And I know at least there's a lot of claim that attention span is shrinking. So maybe the shorter ones make more sense. But at the same time, I will listen to a 3-hour podcast if I'm really
Yeah.
into the topic. So, what do you advise from an instructional design perspective? Like when to do like the mega course versus like a membership site of like many problems and solutions.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a boring answer, but it's to go back to the user. And I know I keep on hammering the same point, but just it's all about creating products that resonate for the users that help them with their outcomes. And I appreciate it's a well-trodden kind of answer, but that's the place to start because ultimately, there are so many courses out there in the world that are collecting digital dust, and that's not because they're terrible courses. They're probably really fantastic, but they just don't land for some reason, and it might be the product itself, it might be the marketing, it might be the productization of the container, how it's wrapped up. So it always starts with the user, but I think to add to that, um, we talk about something called a value ladder. So start small. So like this, this is a Lift for ML LMS experience or product, but it's given away for free. So you've got something where people can allow you to engage with you in a very passive, distance-led way. Understand what you're all about, Chris, what I'm about at Candle Digital, and work their way up the ladder. So I'd almost think of it as that, to be fair. So think about the value that you can add in increments, rather than don't get hung up on the labels. So we find that sometimes um, clients come to us and say, "But I really want a program." But the problem with nailing it at that early stage is that becomes with assumptions about what a program is. It comes with labels and checklists that you have to achieve to make it a program. And is actually that what people want? So I'd always find a way to try and use stuff around, designing out loud. I would create wait lists for stuff. I would just again have conversations with potential users and see what the challenges are and figure out what kind of product or experience is going to help them overcome that challenge. And it might be completely different to what you think. So again, it's kind of a boring answer, but it's talk to your audience and start with them and work backwards.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, at Candle Digital, you guys also have Training Spark.
Hmm.
Tell us about the AI e-learning Powerpack. Why'd you create it? What is it? And how do people get
Yeah, absolutely. So Training Spark is a spin-off of Candle Digital. So what we found is that we were creating plugins for WordPress that filled some of the gaps that perhaps weren't being fulfilled elsewhere. So we have this mantra internally within Candle Digital to sell you sawdust, and that's anything that we create, can we kind of commercialize and productize it in other ways? So with Training Spark, what we did is we started experimenting with AI very early on. It was maybe about 18 months ago, and being candid, when we launched it, it was like to crickets. And I think that was because we were just so early with it that people couldn't grasp their head. And I think, to be fair, a lot of people in the WordPress space, they may be course creators, but they're also agencies. And the demand to involve AI in their projects, needs to come from the client rather than the agency. So there's something we learned a lot there. But what the AI e-learning Power Pack, it works with any WordPress-based LMS like Lifter, but it allows you to create AI-based experiences and use shortcuts to insert them into pages or in various parts of your learning platform. So there are three things that it has. The first one is conversations. So I mentioned this earlier. This was a way of creating almost like simulations. So if you want to create a persona, you can do that within this one interface, within one screen, and you can get that persona to play a different role. And what you can do is you can bring it in so that the user can interact with it in different ways. So it's primarily a chat-based interface right now. We're looking to add voice quite soon. But it's in essence what the AI Power Pack does is it bridges the gap for non-technical WordPress people. So it allows them to bring AI using open AIs, but without having to do all the APIs and all the coding. So the first one is conversations. The second one is the scaffolded reflections, which I referenced the example in the personal brand. So it's where you basically, in essence, you generate suggestion, and based on the prompts in the background, it will create a response which they can then shape and mold and use in different ways. And the final one is also virtual tutors. So virtual tutors, you can choose where it appears on the learning platform, but it's based on the large language model, but it also uses this RAG corpus, so your own materials, so to tailor it in a certain way. So it's just, in essence, the AI learning Power Pack is that bridge between bringing AI into your learning platform without having to go through all the complexities of manually, getting knee deep in the code with OpenAI.
That's awesome. And I've played around with AI Powerpack, AI eLearning Powerpack, and it is awesome. I'm super excited about it. When I saw that and started playing with it, I'm like, oh wow, this is really good. Tell us more about Candle Digital. Who's your ideal client? If somebody's watching this or listening, um, who's the best fit for Candle Digital?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with subject experts and expert businesses. So they are subject experts are usually authors, consultants, trainers, speakers. We also work with training providers, and we also work with some quite large organizations. But it's basically those that have really valuable knowledge and skills that they think they aren't getting the most from. Typically, they would be delivering in person or on virtual, but they just know they've hit a ceiling. They know that if they create some fantastic high impact digital products, then they'll be able to scale what they do. And so we take them through that whole process of um, helping them identify, tease out their ideas, keep the tires on that and make sure that what they're creating is strategically sound. Then we help them design, build, launch, and scale it all that way through. So we're the thread. So we want to work with people that are ambitious. They know their craft. They have all the stories and stars that they go with it. They have an audience already. And what they've done is they've hit a ceiling and they want to level up their game. And we can help them through that whole process.
That's awesome. We're gonna have to do this a year from now, Andy, when and because I know a lot's gonna talk about the exponential curve. We're gonna be in a different place, but also the same place. Like some of the stuff we're
Yeah,
talking about here is just even easier to do. People understand better. Um, it's gonna be interesting times. You
it
out
is.
there watching and listening, I would encourage you to go get the AI e-learning power pack and also check out Candle Digital. That's candle.digital. You said you're big on LinkedIn. Where else can people connect with you? Or is there anything else you want people to check out?
LinkedIn is the best way to find me. Andy Jack, Candle Digital on LinkedIn. I have a fledgling YouTube channel, but I'm following in your footsteps, Chris. I need to be more prolific and less worried about being perfect. But that's a journey I'm going on myself, Chris.
Awesome. Andy, well, thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. That was a fun conversation. And man, it's just an interesting world.
Yeah,
And you know, just get out there and take action and start playing with the tools and put your customer at the center of your business, not your product, and the world changes. But thank you for coming, Andy. I really appreciate it.
thanks, Chris.